but a fundamental question musicians, guitar players eventually ask themselves, how many scales do I need to know? Hello kids, Brian here, and today we are going to talk about a book that instilled fear into generations of non-educated guitar players and even some educated guitar players too. The book we're going to talk about is called The Guitar Grimoire. Kind of a medieval feel to it, eh? Scales and Modes by Carl Fischer. The Grimoire. Wizards, warlocks, has that kind of spellbook feel to it. Kind of could almost be like an accessory in a D&D game. But anyway, this brings me, I'm not just going to talk about why this book is great, but a fundamental question musicians, guitar players eventually ask themselves, how many scales do I need to know? Now, this book, if you have a background and some education in theory, it's going to make some sense to you. Still got to kind of really look at it to understand what's going on. But this book is a valuable resource. Definitely in my top 10 best all guitar textbooks. And we are going to, that's another part of this YouTube channel that we're going to wondrously do. But this book, okay, it's great in the sense that it tells you the different scales and then the modes, right? So what if you start on the second degree of a scale? What is that? Is it the Dorian minor mode? What is it? And also tells you what chords it will work well over. Now, again, guys, there's a 3-part formula, in my opinion, to becoming a very good guitar player, a good musician. Number 1 is technical ability. Having the technical ability to play whatever it is you want to play, whether it's Dream Theater, Neil Young, but if you don't have the technical ability, it ain't going to be sounding too good. Number 2, the theoretical understanding, theory, knowledge. Well, what is theory? It's just basically understanding how music works. If you don't know what the 7th degree of a major scale is, you're not going to really understand this. So it's going to be very important that you have some education and theoretical knowledge. Now, assuming that most of you do, or the people that are watching do, this book is great. And I went through a phase probably 20 years ago where I was really an accomplished guitar player, but I was like, I had this notion in my head that I wanted to memorize every scale that there is, that I needed to do that. Young naivety. So one of the things as we age as a musician is that it's harder for us to remember stuff. Even though we might have a wealth of knowledge, concussions, hits to the head, playing in front of loudspeakers, PA systems, they all take an effect and they all kind of catch up to you. Well, there's a lot of different scales out there. I would often tell people the major pentatonic, the minor pentatonic, the blues scale, learn how to use those, the major scale and the modes of the major scale, Dorian minor, Phrygian minor. We have Lydian major, Mixolydian, Aeolian or natural minor, and Locrian minor. But also common ones too are the melodic minor scale and the modes of that, and also the harmonic minor scale. I think learning a few exotic modes might be kind of cool. Now, the pronunciation of this is still up for debate, but I refer to it as Hiroshi. Okay? A couple of exotic scales are kind of cool to throw into. Hiroshi is a pretty easy one to throw into your playing, your improvisations. Kumoi, there's another one. But there are so many frickin' scales out there, like 8-tone Spanish. Do you know your 8-tone Spanish scale? And then the modes of that. Of course, we have diminished. We have so many different scales, guys. The whole tone scale, augmented. It's good to have a working knowledge of what these are, but you know what? Sometimes you're going to play a scale, work on it, memorize it. Then you might kind of forget it if you don't use it, and then you have to kind of give yourself a refresher. But we know as musicians, it is always easier to relearn something we've already learned. But this book was incredible. Great resource to have. But it also it gave me a lot of stress because I was so type A driven that I felt the need to memorize each and every scale, learn how to improvise with it over the different chords that were suitable. But the reality is for me, and this is only my opinion, some of these scales, like enigmatic, like the enigmatic scale, it's like, okay, like some of the intervals were just so weird. Neapolitan scales, they were just so weird that, you know, using them to create melody or whatever, I don't know, you could. I just feel like the Persian scale, there's so many different scales, and the modes of each scale, which he covers very thoroughly in this book. I just learned for me, when people say to me, well, what scales should I know? I would say the pentatonics, and you know, the pentatonics, you can put those into modes too. That's for another day. But the major and minor pentatonic, the blues scale, the major scale and all the modes of the major scale, and then if you want to start delving into the melodic minor and the modes of that, especially if you're going to be really into playing jazz, and also the harmonic minor scale, a couple of exotic scales. Of course, you know, these other scales, augmented, the whole tone scale and all that other stuff, you want to have a working knowledge of that, but you also don't want to give yourself a stroke by stressing out about not having every single scale and every mode memorized like I almost did 20 years ago. So guys, the Guitar Grimoire is a great book. Again, people tend to just download things now, but there's just something about having a hard copy of something in your hand. I got this book 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, and this is a great book. So again, recommending this book. It scared a lot of people when it first came out. Instills a little bit of fear, but don't be afraid. Step into your fear. Take it on head on. It's a great book. A great book. I can't recommend it enough. You'll find a lot of advanced guitar players out there probably have this in their collection. So the Guitar Grimoire by Carl Fischer. There you go, folks. And a good working knowledge of what scales you want to really have under your belt. But you don't need to know all several hundred of them, because you will go crazy. Believe me. I'm still suffering from it, and I'm still going to therapy trying to memorize every frickin' scale. All right, guys, we will see you next time.